Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil rock.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that likes to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about the riff? Talking about our favorite albums concerning riffs, sometimes interviewing folks. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. With me are my two friends in music, Justin Swindle, Dylan Adams. Justin Swindle and Dylan Adams, how are you?
Doing good. Doing real good.
How convincing. That sounds so convincing.
Normally I have some sort of quick quip or some sort of bit I'm doing, but I don't today. I just couldn't come up with one off the top of my head. But you know, finer than frog hair and twice as bald. That's all I can do for the day. Pretty good overall. Just got back as of recording. I just got back from the mountains. I did not see any bears.
Except yourself.
Yeah, there we go. Which kind of bummed me out. I will say this, Gatlinburg, Tennessee is just a different version of Branson. It was an aural nightmare driving through Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and just seeing neon as far as the eye could see.
It's just billboards.
Oh man, there's like gimmick stuff. I saw so many like of those, like you'll see them at the beach. It's like $9.99 for everything, and it's just trash. It's just like shirts that say guns don't kill people, I kill people, and like all that crap. But the perk to these, one of them said live alligators and the other one said live sharks. And I went, all right, we got to get out of here. We got to go further north. This is too much.
Those Gatlinburg sharks.
Man, I guarantee I would have walked in and it would have been like, God, like some sort of just bass with a shark fin stuck on the back of it. Just
well, it's like it's probably some dude that shouldn't have sharks. I mean, you know,
of
like
course.
What's the Kentucky? There's a place in north of Bowling Green that has like fucking. Well, I didn't want to say it. I don't know if that's a bad thing for me to say a business.
The cops are going to show up.
There's a special zoo.
There's a special zoo with kangaroos that probably shouldn't have kangaroos in Kentucky.
Yeah.
That's just a thought. I don't know.
When that fucking, what was the name of that guy? Like in 2020, the documentary series
Tiger
came
King.
out. Yeah. I wonder if that is like a Tiger King situation. That petting zoo or whatever.
He's married to one of them, probably. I don't know.
Hey, Arkansas had something very similar, and they had a lot of like big jungle cats and stuff like that in this weird spot. You would never imagine you'd see it. And it's like, okay, what else is being brought into this state and
right.
why?
I worked for a water park in town, very near to here, and they had like it was almost like an above ground pool with like fucking otters or like seals in it. I was like, why is this here? It's like, think of like if you just walked out back to your neighbor's pool and there were just fucking seals in it. And they were just like, that's about how big it was. And people just showed up from miles around just to see an above ground pool with seals. I don't know.
Pay $8-9 just to let their kids look at the seals.
Yeah, man. I mean, I wasn't getting paid enough to have an opinion on it, I guess,
no.
But
Did they have shirts that said like Seal Illinois?
I hate you.
God,
I will say this without disclosing where I work, but the first couple years I was there and knowing what kind of goes on during that certain period of that certain month of the year when certain animals might fall was very interesting to learn about. We'll just say this, it's tradition in the state that I live next to have that, but
it's very ambiguous.
So ambiguous. So fucking vague.
There's a reason.
They could be
There's a reason.
So many things within that context.
Absolutely, and that's how it should be left. But other than that, the mountains were fun.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we were talking about. I appreciate you guys kind of holding down the fort while I was gone. I loved listening to the episode.
We shoved that fort under fucking water.
Yeah, it was fun. I got to listen to it as like just a fan, and it was very funny. And also editing all of the shit was also a lot of fun for me as well.
I'm telling you, between the sickness of Tony Iommi riffs and me and mental imaging like Matt Pike holding a guitar like a sword, like he's in a Zelda game. Just those are the two things that hit me the most of like, holy shit, what have we done?
I'm just glad I didn't talk shit about anyone. That
What do you mean?
had to be cut
No,
out
you're
of
good
the
about that.
episode.
You're
No,
good
you
about that. You're fine.
Yeah, you definitely didn't do that in that episode. Wasn't there? I feel like I should also bring up that we recently celebrated an anniversary, our first year as a podcast. Who'd have thought? 1 year down, we made it through 52 weeks. We did a bunch of albums. We did a deep dive. We interviewed a bunch of guests. What started as a last-ditch effort to pass a class, literally, evolved into a video podcast with my best friends, interviewing people that we really looked up to and artists that we really enjoy. It's pretty wild. So from the bottom of my heart, thank both of you for letting me drag you into this shit. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for listening to us. If you ever have at any point during this year, I really appreciate that. But yeah, 1 year down, that's pretty fucking crazy to think about.
It's been the longest year of my life. The last time I had this much peace, I was a POW in WW2.
Wow. What side were you on, Dylan?
I was just there. I didn't have a side. I was just there.
Damn.
But it for real, it's been good. I think the quote from you, Austin, when this started was, "We already do this shit." How many nights was it spent on a couch in front of a big TV, just blaring God knows what, just talking about this shit till we were blue in the face. Why not subject everybody else on the planet to this? Why not add another podcast to, what's out there and just like subject listeners to every bit of this. And somehow we've gotten like people that are interested in hearing it. And it's also became a good way for all of us to kind of like catch up with each other and keep in touch, because the older we get, the harder it is for us to, spend time doing that. We have our day-to-day shit that we have to tend to, and we all three of us live in different states and we're various hours away from each other. So it makes it easier to at least have 1 to 2 nights a week where we kind of sit down and go, all right, we're essentially just playing catch up and talking about a couple records we like.
Yep, 100%. And
Agreed.
to drag Swindle into it too. First as a guest, I guess. Although I did reach out to you initially to do this, and then
Yep.
I there was a way to just drag you in, kicking and screaming.
Yeah, y'all were like, let's see how many records Swindle loves we can get in a row to get him onto this show.
That is 100% it.
Yeah.
There was a point where you came on, and I think we did the Nirvana episode, and you came on, and then after that, he and I like spoke the next day, and I just kept going, here's all these records we could pull him in on. Like, there's a way we can do this. And it was just like, why don't you just, I can't remember what episode we recorded. Maybe it was it Motorhead that we finally sat down and Austin was like, why don't you just do this?
I don't love talking. I don't love the speaking. I don't love that.
Thanks for at least stomaching it for an hour at a time for us. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I bring that up because I feel like we also wanted to use this as a way to do something bigger, something that we don't normally get to do often. We've only done one of them before with the cattle decapitation deep dive. So as a way to kind of kickstart a new year, we thought it would be a lot of fun to deep dive another band that we really, really enjoy. A band that I guess for me personally, I have Swindle to blame for, but It has become one of my favorite groups of all time. They are very prolific, very heavy, very, I would say avant-garde, or just very like not your typical sludge, doom, whatever you want to call it. It is so much more than those titles or definitions or whatever you want to call it.
Layers, donkey, layers.
Subversive,
deep, bleak, melancholy. Oh, it's bleak.
Angry.
yeah.
Fuck. it's thou.
Yeah, we're talking about Thou. We're going to be discussing some full-length releases by Baton Rouge, Louisiana's Thou. We're going to talk a little bit about their EPs, singles, stuff we like, because that also kind of fits into their discography later in this episode. But we thought it would probably be best to keep it to the full-length releases. One, just because I feel like those probably have the most concise like theme, or
it's definitely the most direct material that they have in a scope, right? Like you're getting, anywhere from 5 to 10 tracks that are in the theme of what they're going for and can present what they have, the image that they have in their head to the listener. Whereas maybe the splits, the comps, the collabs, everything this band has done is a little bit more like, hey, we have some songs that we've put together. Let's put it out for this release. Or it's a more thematic thing, maybe in a much more, it's funny to say this about this group, because saying something is more grandiose than their own album releases is kind of odd. But like you've got the splits and the collabs that they've done, like the stuff with Emma Ruth Rundle, the stuff with The Body, the stuff with Mizmor, all of those projects that are essentially their own thing, right? Thou is kind of full of hell level of prolific. And I would even say on a much polar opposite spectrum, like a Bruce Springsteen level of like prolific, to where songs are being out. Regardless of what they are, the song is getting out somehow. If it's not released, there's a live version of it somewhere you can see, that sort of thing.
I feel like the most prolific part of Thou was like definitely the first 6 years. Like just the amount of splits and EPs
Oh,
they
it's
had
ludicrous.
in addition, is wild. But lately, like they released the 2 collabs, but they haven't released their own solo music since like 2018.
I am obviously not as familiar with this band. I shouldn't even say band, this kind of collective of individuals as you guys are, because they've grown. They're not just necessarily a band anymore. They've grown to have multiple new members throughout the years and different instruments and everything added to it. But I am far less, familiar with this act than you guys are.
yeah. And even then, I guess I'd really have to say it starts with Swindle. I can remember where I was when I first heard it. We were at like a mutual friend's house, and I don't know what we
Was it at a party?
Kind of, actually. Like we stayed
Sociopath.
we were sitting in this person's living room, and the song comes on, and I don't even know if I necessarily got hooked instantly, but I was certainly like,
Curious.
what the fuck is that? Like,
Right.
I've never heard the tone or just maybe even, I was still kind of a newcomer to a lot of underground music as well. So it was still very foreign to me in that regard. But yeah, I was definitely like, I don't understand this. I don't even know if I like it yet, but I'm going to like dive more into this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really have to say it kind of starts with you, but I don't know if I even know where you first heard it, to be honest with you. Like it's always just kind of been this thing that's existed. So do you remember where you first heard Thou?
No, I think it was before I was born. I think time Thou's existed as long as time, and I was born with the knowledge of that band. But honestly, like my guess is I found them on this blog spot that I found like all of the punk music I kind of ever got into on. I guess I probably found them there, and then just went to the like NOLA DIY website that, like, before Bandcamp, they had all their shit for free just on their website. And I just was like, okay, I'm going to go to every single release on this website and download all of this. But I don't know if I remember the first ever time listening to this band, but I definitely have a distinct memory of sitting in a Whole Foods in Chicago, listening to the Work Ethic Myth from Peasant.
Yeah.
And that was like very, 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 very early on in my Thou listening experience.
Damn, what were you getting? Were you getting some like berries or something?
No, 16 was on like
Oh,
tour.
that's fitting.
We played 3 shows in 6 days, but we just went to Chicago to hang out, and we were like picking up a person from work that we were staying with. When I would force people to listen to Thou, they were like
subject.
Truly. There were like 4 or 5 songs that I played. We are talking about at least 2 of them in this episode. One of them is one of your covers. Then there's the song from Tyrant. I always used to play Burning Dark Coals and Black Memories from Peasant. And I always used to play the cover of Under the Bridge, because it's just like, there's not even a riff. It's just screaming and just releasing emotion.
Well, at one point when I moved, I didn't have a car either. So not only did I have that moment of, being in that person's living room and, again, being subjected to this or whatever, but it would be further beaten into my skull through you driving me to work. Like definitely that Nirvana is it the Owls? What is it?
Archer and the Owl.
Yes, I definitely remember that. I definitely remember a lot of the artwork that comes along with these releases, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But I guess I also want to ask the question to you: why Thou? Why this band? Out of all the bands we could do a deep dive on, why are we choosing to spend the next few episodes of this show discussing the work of Thou?
For me, like, they are a heavy metal band, but they have the punk ethic, which hits right at fucking home for me, because I love punk rock, and I love trying to stick to that DIY punk ethic. And again, a lot of times with this band, it's not as much like the technical parts of what they're doing as much as it's just like when you hear Brian fucking screaming, like, it's just pure venom and sadness and malice. It's very emotional music, and it is just always stuck with me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the ethic, the way that this band carries themselves, the live performance, again, is something that I think this band does super well. But yeah, when it comes to the records, talking about the albums itself, the way that it has impacted me and gotten me into new music, even through some of the covers or some of the influences that they're channeling into their own music, whether directly from their region or from a completely different genre of music. I think this band has had a very huge influence on my listening habits from the moment that I really got into them. And every time they put something out, I'm like, I have to hear it, because I know it's going to be something at least unique or maybe challenging or just different. I don't know. It's just a
challenging for sure.
But yeah, I would say that this band just kind of stands on their own to me. When I hear it, I kind of know it's them too, in a lot of ways where maybe you hear like an I Hate God song, you kind of know it's an I Hate God song. I feel like this band has a similar kind of vibe to it as well, with maybe some of the feedback and the, they just, I really appreciate what they do. I really appreciate their output. And yeah, this was like a no-brainer for me for sure.
Dylan. Why are you putting up with a
So-
month's worth of thou?
When this is, and I'm going to quote you for a fact, this is a band that I've known you've liked for more than liked, for, God, it's 2024. So at least the better part of almost 15 years. And it's always kind of been there, right? It's always, in the queue of like whatever we're listening to, in comes a thou track. And I think you said to me maybe a year or two ago, it was, I just don't get it. Like, I don't get how you haven't latched onto this band yet. And I don't think there's any particular reason as to why. I think it was more so just there's so much out there from this band that it is kind of overwhelming at first to go. It's like, yeah, I could start with like the Heathen record or Tyrant or, Summit or something like that. But the way my brain works is it's kind of all or nothing. I have to go through and like hit every single thing and like, swallow all that up. And the reason, do we want to do the legitimate reason, or do we want to do kind of, do we want to do the secondary reason? Because there's kind of 2 points to why I wanted to do this. The main one was that I felt like when we did the cattle decapitation deep dive a year or so ago, that was more so a service to me to do that. Because obviously Austin is a fan of that band, but I've been listening to that band since I was, 15, 16 years old. Whereas with this band, I know both of you guys are really into it. And selfishly, I wanted to go, okay, there's 3 of us. We should all be able to do at different points something that we put a lot of effort into that maybe one of us isn't completely like familiar with, right? And that way, because I've always been someone to go, I want to find more new things I've never heard before. And I was hoping with this, it would also get you guys, Swindle would also make you feel, maybe like it's not a one-sided thing with how we're doing the podcast and, the information we're looking into, albums we're looking into, to give you like, hey, let's dedicate this block of like time to something you guys are far more familiar with than I am. And I also wanted to be able to go, okay, I finally want to be able to dig into this band hard. I want to do the full like estimated amount of time it's going to take to dig into this, because these are not easily listenable records. But I like challenging music in that sense. And I own a copy of Magus. I think I have a copy of Heathen floating around here somewhere. But like, I know those 2 records more than anything, because when Heathen came out, I remember having a conversation with you about the track title Ode to Physical Pain. And that track title has stuck with me since then. It's like, that's one of the best song titles I've ever heard in my entire life. It's not as direct as maybe one of the tracks we're talking about today, but it is like, Jesus. Because when I heard that song title and that song for the first time, it was just, okay, this makes complete sense about the mess of the voices and everything that are going on in my head. This is like, going to the gym because you hate yourself is vastly different than going to the gym because you want to be healthy. So like hearing that track title, it's like going, I'm doing this to myself for a fucking reason. And this reflects that. So, long-winded there. It was I wanted to discover more about this band that I didn't know enough about, that 2 of my best friends love, and that I also wanted to be as, democratic as possible and make sure we were all getting things we want to talk about into this so it didn't seem as one-sided.
I suppose we should start. We're going to be talking about Tyrant today, the very first record, but maybe we should circle back to the very beginning of this band. Thou formed in 2005 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I believe Brian is actually from New Orleans, if I did my reading correctly, but most everyone else in the band is actually from Baton Rouge, which is about like an hour and a half drive from New Orleans. It's the capital city of Louisiana. Its main exports are, I don't know. I just did like a fucking 5th grade project. But
travel show.
I don't really know much about this city. I've never been to Louisiana in general. I know it's the capital. I know LSU's there. Other than that, not much else. Some damn good music comes from there. I would say that while, yes, you could look at this band and go, this is a sludge band. There are definitely some grunge influences, probably a lot more grunge influence than there would be your Crowbars or your I Hate Gods, your bands that come from this area, although they definitely cite those as influences, maybe just as like kind of a filter for whatever else they're listening to.
Yeah, I liked that, seeing that in the research. I loved seeing that that's kind of the scope, that's kind of the filter, because it's basically like, here's all of these influences we have. As you said, grunge music, post-rock, big time. And it's just all swirled into like this sludge metal New Orleans like filter. So it's like everything gets sludgified as it just runs through there. So it's like, here's all these kind of pretty parts and everything that we really like, and into the murk now. Yeah. And it's like, God, okay, that makes more sense.
When you look at this band, you may have to look at 3 of its members that really kind of started it. Probably guys who had been playing together for quite some time. Mitch Wells, who plays bass, still plays bass. Matthew Thudium, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, on guitar, and Andy Gibbs on guitar. This band formed from the ashes of several other bands in the area. Mitch was in a band I found called Man Plus Building. It's kind of like an indie rock project from Baton Rouge, only active for a couple years. It also features a future member of Thou, Josh, who played drums on a few albums for them. Matthew, I'm not sure if he was in another band. The only band that I could really see was Bargist, that Thou ultimately did a split with. And then Andy was in a couple projects as well. He was in Spring Break Shark Attack, which was like a thrash-inspired surfabilly band from Louisiana.
Man, I was going to say, if that's not the most like semi-municipal waste sounding name.
You said it was a thrash-inspired what band?
It was a thrash-inspired surfabilly band.
Oh my God, that's every genre of music that can ever be.
We didn't bring it up and we don't have to, but you've always asked me, or you've always made the statement that you think Andy Gibbs is related to somebody in Crowbar. There was a Gibb in Crowbar, but I don't think these two are related.
But that Gibb is related to the Gibbs,
the Bee Gees,
the Gibb brothers, right?
Yes,
right.
He's the son. Correct.
Someone in Thou might be related to someone in I Hate God, though, like, or something. I distinctly remember someone in Thou in an interview being like, "Yeah, I'm related to this guy from," and I don't remember.
Yeah, there was like a interview in someone's van. I think they were in like Chicago, and I don't know if it was a joke. This band writes so like profoundly, and it seems like so serious when you're like listening to it. Like, oh my God, like they are just truly like pouring their hearts out. But then when you listen to interviews or them in any other context, they are total goofballs. And I think someone said that maybe Mitch was related to Mike Williams, and I've lived my whole life not knowing if that was true or not. Like, just always wondered.
There's definitely an interview I watched done by Revolver where they had to pick like their top 11 cover songs. The demographic of everybody speaking to each other is terrible. Like, I watched it and went, oh my God, they hate each other. Like, they're all just sitting there going like, that's terrible. Like, that's awful. Like, just going back and forth. It's like, oh my God, my brain would erode.
There's 9 members of Thou now.
But then I think back of all of us sitting there going like, what the fuck are you playing? Or just anything like that. And I'm like, all right, it's fitting. I get it.
I want to say on like Discogs or maybe Metallum, Andy was listed also in a band called We Need to Talk. They only put out like one EP on One Eye Records, which Brian founded. And that we'll get to that in a minute because they come back for this record. But so you basically have Mitch, Matt, Andy, then Terry on drums. He was also a member of Bargist. I'm going to get that right eventually, I promise. And they released a few demos together. I think they more or less were kind of instrumental, not so much like focused on the vocal part of it. I think
Makes sense.
Matthew was the vocalist of this band first, and it didn't sound anything like Brian. I think you can kind of hear him on this record actually with like more of like the clean singing parts, and on future releases as well. This iteration of the band, this 4-piece, they played for a few years, and Brian joined in 2007. He moved to Oakland for a little bit. He tried to start like some bands out there after Hurricane Katrina, and then came back to New Orleans and was kind of like gung ho and wanted to just like be in a project. So I've like read multiple times or in interviews where he's just like, I pestered the hell out of them to like, I forced them to let me join this band and be vocalist for them. And that's kind of like where we have this lineup essentially that will last for at least a few releases.
That is a very Sammy Dewey thing of like joining the band you want to be in. Like, hey man, I'm going to be your new guitar player. Go talk to Kirk.
So Brian's not on the first demo, Call No Man Happy Until He's Dead from 2005. He is on like this tour demo, this tour exclusive from 2007. It's like 3 rough mixes from the Tyrant LP with some like alternate vocal track, I think I read. So after the demos, you have essentially Tyrant. A lot of this record was already written before Brian had even joined the band. Even vocals were even recorded before Brian had joined the band, but they were somehow Matthew's vocals were just either they were accidentally deleted, maybe purposely. I don't know. They're just gone. So it was kind of a perfect moment for Brian to join the band and really just go full throttle with doing his thing, which I believe I read he basically just kind of expanded off of what Matthew already had. Like a lot of the vocal, like the lyrics were written. They were more sparse, but he just kind of added to the themes and the lines that Matt had already recorded for the project.
Did someone in like an interview joke or maybe intimate that the vocals had been purposefully deleted? Is there a reason that...
I never saw anything that said it was like, oh yeah, they were mysteriously, like very sarcastically, but it just seems like kind of funny that they just disappeared. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what technology was like back then, but I don't know. I mean, I guess everything happens for a reason, and it just so happened that here's a guy that wants to be in your band. The vocals are kind of cleared out, and you have all of these riffs for somebody to scream over. So here you go. Before Brian joined, they had like basically spent a year writing all of the material. So basically like Andy would have a part of a song, Matthew would have another part of the song, and they would just kind of come together. And it seems like these guys were just prone to jam it out. It definitely feels like that on this record, even where maybe you have like arrangements and parts, but there's a lot of this record that feels like very like organic and maybe kind of off the cuff in a ways, like with maybe some of the dynamics being switched up or, you know, the effects that are being used. But yeah, they really spent a lot of time on this record. Brian joins and the album was kind of fleshed out and Brian adds his lyrics to it. It was recorded and mixed in 2007 by multiple people. And this may just be the fact that maybe they didn't have like a kind of stagnant or like set place to record. There are 3 people that are credited with the recording and mixing of this album. Andy Gibbs, the band's guitarist, is credited as one person who is in the production of this. Brendan Moss, who also works on future releases of this band. He's like a close friend of the band, and Michael Tully. And so, yeah, they basically just recorded in several different places, practice spaces, apartments, conference rooms, Oakland, New Orleans, Baton Rouge. But yeah, it's basically just kind of very DIY, as Swindle mentioned.
There are people that when they are recording their music are like very, very worried about the room that they're recorded in. And like, it's got to be like it's got to be like a big room when we record drums, or like there can't be any noise going on elsewhere. But it's like these folks recorded this in their apartment or in like stairwell, like wherever they could. And I love this record. So sometimes you just don't have to worry as much about it as you think you do.
what I've noticed about this band is all of their records definitely sonically have a similar sound, and that's not a negative, but it just shows too that you can hear every instrument on here, even with the low tunings and the dense production and all the layers. Like it's very fleshed out. You can hear everything. It's not one thing over the other in this. And there's also some different textures to the recording as well. Like it's not just like, hey, we got a buddy just to hit record, right? It's not an engineering situation. There is definitely like somebody going, hey, what if we add a little bit of reverb there? What if we add some distortion to the vocals and bring the vocals down in the mix a little bit to add effect to it? But to kind of add to what you said, Swindle, on like, sometimes people just overthink shit, right? When it comes to recording. I know you're not necessarily a fan of this band, but I know Austin and I are a big fan of this record in particular. Jim Morrison recorded his vocals for LA Woman in a bathroom because the acoustics sounded the way they did off the tile. Like he was just like, fuck it. It sounds good in there. Let's do it.
How many of our friends have done that? Or just like, we don't have a lot of money, you know, we're just going to figure out what we can do. And I don't think it makes the album sound like the tone of it doesn't sound like super like, oh, you could tell this is where it was recorded, or, you know,
Right.
It doesn't feel like, super like inconcise. It all kind of flows together like tonally to me. You could have told me it was recorded in one place, I would have probably believed you. So they made it work. As far as the release goes, I want to say this was originally supposed to be released on a record label called Morbid Massacre Records, which they were supposed to do like a cassette version of. The owner of that label, I guess after reading the lyrics, was just like not about it. So that got canned. And then it was released on Brian's own label, One Eye Records, which they did like kind of a 12-inch vinyl for, 500 copies. This album has gotten reissued several times, and I know we'll touch on that a little later with the bonus tracks, but from the first initial release that we're kind of maybe more talking about today, it was released on One Eye Records. The artwork is also something I wanted to touch on too, because there's like multiple iterations of it. There's the one, I think it's the Gilead media version, is the first one that I remember seeing when we were in our friend's living room, Swindle. It's the guy with like a big fucking wrench or like some sort of weapon, and he is just swinging at like bats or whatever.
I fucking love those album like covers. There are like 4 or 5 of them by Thou that are just like red, black, and white. There's a cover of Peasant that's like a person hanging from a stockade or whatever, like a real hanging. And then there's one on like the Big City Split that's like a huge person with like people on its back or whatever. I fucking love those album covers.
They look really great.
I've never seen any of those covers. I've only seen the wood etching ones that are kind of the mass produced, and those are that I'm more familiar with those, so it adds kind of like this overarching theme of like there's this weird biblical thing with this band, which the name kind of ties in with that a little bit. But the only two albums that I'm familiar with the actual artwork would be Heathen and Magus, right? And obviously What's to Come. But yeah, it's funny to think that there's so many different variations of the artwork for I would assume all of their releases, because of it's just so that might be the most punk rock thing I see about this band. It's just like, fuck it, we're putting out another one, get some more artwork, let's put it out.
Yeah. And you know, you could really collect so many of these, but yeah, I would have to imagine all the red and kind of like that like very bright, vibrant red, kind of white covers would all have to be like the Gilead versions. The original artwork's cool. That one just like is so striking to me at first.
Right.
Anthony Gonzalez is also credited with the original bat logo that a lot of fans might be familiar with. It appeared on shirts. I think it was on their website for a very long time as well. But yeah, they use a lot of woodcuts. They use a lot of like photography later. Brian basically had like a huge library of stuff that he had saved from his days in booking shows, making posters. And, you know, like probably a lot of us, they're like, you see something that you like and you're probably like, this would make a great cover, or this would make a good blank. You just hold on to it. And Thou seems to be kind of the outlet in which he can really express himself with that, or use some of these great pieces of art and that translate well into whatever he's writing about. So definitely some really great artwork that you can kind of put on the record and kind of just get lost into when you listen to Thou, I think.
I'm gonna save that one for later.
Yeah, pretty much.
I know what I'm gonna do with that 4 years later.
If I'm not wrong, too, I'm pretty sure he worked for a university, so I think he had access to a library of some sort that he could have pulled from. I don't know if I'm absolutely correct on that, but I think he had access to an archive somehow. Maybe we should get into the steak and potatoes, though. Get into some of the music. What do you say?
Let's fucking do it.
Title track, right out of the gate, Tyrant. 8.5 minute song. I want to open the floor to you. What do you think?
They start in a very I hate God manner.
I wrote the same
Yep.
same thing. 100%.
Yeah. Just feedback right off the riff for like 15 or 20 seconds.
It's like kind of like what I said earlier. I know when I hear an I Hate God song, because of the feedback, there's like just the tonal quality that when it comes on, you know it's I Hate God. I feel like it's the same thing with this band to me. You hear some feedback by Thou, it's used as, like you said, another instrument that like, oh, okay, I know instantly. I'm transported to a place. When the song starts, it's just guitars, and I feel like it's almost like kind of warming you up. They're like kind of almost, you're just kind of getting acclimated to what's to come. It's
the fluffer riff.
Yeah, the fluffer riff.
It's funny, I feel the same way about a song later, and I'll get into that. When the whole band kicks in, it's actually in like the middle of the fucking riff.
Yeah.
Like it's not like right the fourth time the riff plays, that's when the whole band starts. It's like the fourth time he's going in the riff, and then the whole band comes in right in the middle of it.
What I thoroughly loved about, and obviously like I have my little like dumb cliff notes on the document we've got here, because like how I kind of approach every record, how I do like a review, I listen to it and I just take down kind of these shorthand notes of like what it seems like to me or how it feels. What I noticed about every track on this record, but I noticed this first one in particular, was if you sped the parts up, right, and you shorten the song, this is tech metal. I'm sorry. Like there's time signature changes, there's meter changes, there's different types, there's different patterns played under different riffs to add changes to that. Like if you shrunk some of the song links up and you like, say they played it at like 180 as opposed to 80, you would get all of these like these guys, when you brought up earlier that it's a very practiced, very like they got the songs down, like there's no way they could have recorded this stuff off the cuff without having a little bit of knowledge, because there's some pretty like challenging shit in here to make them go, oh yeah, it's a very guttural form of music because of what it is, but like they definitely spent time honing it in. And maybe, and I don't know about the records after this, but this one in particular made me like go, oh, there's a lot of different things that they're doing in each track. I mean, just with this one, just the use of kind of that opening main riff where it's just kind of a variation of itself played over the next, it's like 2 or 3 minutes. And it's like, there's that great chromatic kind of descending riff that's there that makes me think of like World Coming Down era Type O, but it's also got that drone that opens it up. I mean, there's as much sun as there is like, sludge metal in here. the dissonant chords, the dissonant minor chords, which is very much a trait of like kind of the post rock area stuff, right? I mean, this is some pretty technical shit in a weird way. Like there's definitely more thought put into what they're playing as opposed to like kind of some of their contemporaries or some of the sludge legends that came before, which is very much like it's only from the gut, right? Like, you know, a song like All I Had was definitely like, we just want a fast punk song. Whereas this was very much like from the gut, but they're still like, hey, we've spent a lot of time kind of honing our abilities. Let's write something we like. Let's not write to, you know, what we think it should be. But I mean, the overall vibe of this track and the use of the low fucking tunings on this album is pretty baffling of how it's done. They use that like I Hate God uses the feedback. I think they use the low tunings not as just an effect of like, oh, it's just a lower pitch. They use it as, here's this different tonality overall and this different kind of instrument we can add to this.
Yeah, it gives it the like very, almost like, I don't mean this in a bad way. It's like that flubby kind of tone to it.
No, absolutely.
Like, it feels like, yeah, you can tell. I mean, a lot of this, it feels like it's about to fucking, the strings are about to fall off the goddamn neck.
When you play that low and you play up on those higher kind of portions of the neck, you lose a little bit of that intonation, but it's still kind of, basically, if you look at a tuner, rather than it sitting straight, it's going to kind of bounce a little bit like that. It adds to that, but it also adds to the fact that it does give a different tonality to it. And it does give a different effect to the overall tracks. I mean, this is, Jesus Christ, this is a hell of a track. Like to start a record out with.
The other thing I definitely wanted to touch on too, and it definitely goes through the entire record. We kind of mentioned this in the Slint album, Spiderland, where, you know, you have two guitar players. They're both kind of playing in unison in a way, but they're playing, whether it's like a different harmonic or like an upstroke or whatever, that creates this kind of, you know, weird effect. Like whether it's a dissonance or whatever, there's something that's just it sticks out. You listen to it, there's definitely two things being played, although it is probably the same, you know, it's there. You hear it in the kind of the bends, especially. There's a lot of those, like that classic thou bend. You'll hear Matthew and Andy just kind of playing alongside each other, but it's not quite the same. So it's like a little off, but it's there and it really adds to it.
Tuning down the way they do and using kind of just standard instruments, right? Like it's not some sort of crazy like extended scale instrument. Those really didn't exist at that point. But just like, hey, here's this thing we like doing. Let's tune it down. You know, we'll just play lighter. We'll play softer. And let's add to it. But it's, man, just this is the only band I've ever heard that uses like tuning low as almost as an additional instrument. Like it's just so fucking baffling. And that adds to that kind of thou thing, right? That's that signature. And the first thing I think of when I hear this band is Brian's vocals. That's first and foremost. I know it's like kind of typical to say like the singer, but something about his vocals just makes me think of like flesh being peeled. Like that is what it sounds like. I know we've made the joke and he's very like, he's in on it too about the Gollum vocals or like the Schmeagol vocals, like 100%. Like I'm actually reading The Hobbit currently. And I was like, this is too fucking good. Like this is too much.
Some of it is what he's singing about in like more straightforward songs like this song, Tyrant, is like just, this is an anti-religious, anti-Christian song, and it doesn't take a genius to fucking figure that out. You just read the lyrics, and there's a lyric that I sent to y'all earlier in the week that's like, we'll never escape the like foul stench of Christianity or something like that. But also the venom, a lot of the venom is in his voice. And I think that might be, to me, it might be because it sounds like what he would sound like if he were actually screaming. Like, it's not, there are a lot of metal bands where people are doing vocals, and when you listen to it, you're like, just like, that's not how you, like, if you just yelled this at somebody, you wouldn't sound like that. But to me, like, Brian's voice sounds like what he would sound like if he were screaming at me about Christianity.
I went back. I forgot to mention Brian was also in another band called Dear Diary, I Seem to Be Dead, which was kind of like I don't know how you would
and that's
say
the
like,
Light Project.
That's the 90s that's the 90s screamo band that he was in. I thought it might sound like drastically different. It doesn't. Like, it just sounds like Brian, like, which is really cool that it's just like, okay, this is like,
yeah,
he has a thing. He's known it for a while and he's just doing it. And that's awesome.
Swindle brought up in the High on Fire episode we did, which I'm sorry you weren't there, that he always thought Matt Pike was kind of like, oh yeah, he puts on his voice. That's just how he sounds when he fucking sings. And I pretty well, once you mentioned that, it's like, Brian's got it. That's just got to be his thing. Like, he just sounds that way. He couldn't be in any other band other than something like this.
The other thing I wanted to note too about Brian's vocals, and maybe it's just on this song in particular, maybe you guys noticed it as well. I think because maybe Brian was a latecomer to a lot of the writing for this record, the vocals do match up with what the guitar is doing. So it's just, I don't know if that's just, hey, this kind of groove makes sense to me. This might be the only song that really does that I really noticed on, but I think perhaps it may be because he was a latecomer to it.
Yeah.
That's just how it fit in. It's a great track. The other thing that was a standout, of course, on this song and the next one are the kind of spacey kind of break. It's like very sparse, clean parts where, you know, Matthew's singing over it. There's a lot of dynamics on this record in that regard. I feel like, you know, if you're going to be the heaviest band ever, how are you going to change it up? You might just add a little post-metal section or a little ambience there.
I specifically love the lead guitar part during I fucking love that part.
It's understanding that they kind of were like a post-rock influenced band maybe before Brian came along is very fitting of this record. You still hear a lot of that on this record. And again, we'll dig further the further we go into the band's catalog, but you definitely hear a lot of it on this record. And it's not, sometimes the whole post-rock thing can get a little overdone. Like, you spend a little bit too much time going, what sound effect do I need? What pedal do I need? These guys just kind of have a go at it. It's just like, all right, there's a reverb, a little bit of delay, very slight. Very, again, pedal board's probably very punk rock. There's probably a rat, a big muff, you know, cut, delay, whatever. Really straightforward. But they do it really well and it fits. It doesn't just feel like, here's this part we have to give dynamics. It fits. You know, and that's, I fucking love all of like the kind of dynamics of that. Particularly the next track on the album has one of my favorite parts towards the tail end. That is like fucking awesome.
With a cold, life extinguishing elegance. I like the beginning of the song too. It's like, again, very light, cleanish sounding. There's like a little play with the ride, but then it just bursts into a wall of sound. It really is
just like,
it's jarring. It's like you're not expecting it in a way, and you're like, because it's so faint, you're like, I can imagine someone like listening closely to it, like, what is that? And then bap, like right in the fucking chops. There's so much sustain and that kind of lead line that you were talking about, like, or at least that tone of it, whatever effects he's using, it comes back. It kind of circulates through the whole album as kind of like a motif or whatever, but it's here again on this song for sure.
that title is one of the most US black metal sounding titles I've heard that's not on a Krieg record.
There's a lot of good titles on this through this band.
This is the opening of this track makes me think of Neurosis Locust Star, where it's this very clean picked thing for like 2 minutes, and then it's just like a gasp, or it's a deep breath, and then it just hits. And it's very jarring. But that's what's so cool about like this track is it is jarring. It's not pleasant. I mean, and this, I heard this song and there's some like big lumbering riffs in this. I go, God damn it. This is relapse era Neurosis all over it.
There's a one point where, again, it's that 2 guitar thing, and they interplay so much with they interplay so well with each other. At one point, there's like this groovy kind of riff on the record where it almost sounds like it would be just like a big fucking octave pedal, but it's just the 2 of them, and it's so cool.
So to bring up that octave thing, I think this is one of the tracks that's tuned differently. Okay. So basically, it seems the basic tuning on the whole record was like C sharp, which is kind of Black Sabbath, that sort of thing. But rather than just tune their lowest string down to like a B or like a G sharp, they tuned it down to fucking F sharp, which is the same tuning as the second string on the guitar, like the second lowest. So it is an octave right there. And that means you can 1-finger octave one note. And it's like, Jesus Christ, it just adds so much texture and dynamic to it.
The riff, one of the riffs that I took note of from this song is like, after it gets heavy for like, I don't know, like one time through, they just like cut off the distortion, and it's just like the riff is like, but it's like,
with
there's
those drum
no
hits.
fucking distortion, but it's just the heaviest fucking riff in the world.
That's some Tad shit. Like, I heard that, I went like, oh fuck, that's like, that could have been a Jack and Dino thing. Like, I heard that and went, both of them.
Both of them?
Both of them. Jan and Dean, Jack and Dino. That, like, I heard that and was like, God damn, this is 90s rock. This is like original era grunge. And the dynamics on this track going from the soft to the loud, like in a part like that, and using that, and also leading in with the tons of like, they play the same riff quite a few times on this track, but the drums change under it. So it changes the feel and changes the vibe. I fucking love that.
I wanted to bring up the drums too, because I feel like Terry really gets to kind of spread like all over the kit with a lot of stuff. When you have a song that is really just so straightforward, like guitar wise, it's just this kind of driving repetitive riff. Terry really gets to like have fun and does some like ridiculous like fills and parts all over this record that are so cool.
I hope we're talking about the same track later in the album that I pointed out. Fucking hell. But I agree. Like, you're right. If it's the guitars and the bass kind of hold the fundamental, right? Like they kind of act as the drummer in certain parts. So like the drummer's like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do whatever I want. Please do more shit like that.
The other thing too, and I don't know if you guys noticed, where it not just Terry, maybe a couple other members of the band as well, you do get that kind of jammy feel, and there might be like a little hiccup there, like maybe somebody came just a little slower or a little above it. Those little imperfections add so much to it, and it definitely feels like, again, you're just kind of jamming along with the band, like you're just in a room, it's 5 guys just going at it, I guess. I don't know. Some
of those like double guitar parts, you can tell one guy might be kind of lagging a little bit. And you brought that up in earlier, but it does add this weird, it's a feel, it's a vibe. It adds kind of a different texture to it, right? This definitely feels like it was recorded very like DIY, very punk rock. Like, we have $14 to record this record and make it sound as good as we can. Fuck it. You get 2 takes. Like, there's an urgency to that. That's so fucking cool. The bridge in this song leading into the end of the song is one of my favorite things on the whole record. They bring Brian down in the mix just a little bit, just slightly. So his vocals are more of like an ambient thing. And that is like, that sounds like Leviathan. It sounds like Zazdler. It sounds like Krieg to me. And then that fucking slide guitar kicks in. And I go, all right, this is a Western. I love this so much because it has that tonality to it of like, God, is this on the Good, the Bad, the Ugly? Is this an Ennio Morricone track? Like, shit.
I like the kind of like sparse spaciness of this part in the song, but it also, like, while it feels kind of vast and big, at the same time, I don't know if this makes sense, it just feels like the air got sucked out of the room, and it's fucking like just very intense. Very intense.
It's very, you know what it is very fucking misleading going into the next fucking song.
Yes.
It's lulling you right into a false sense of security. And actually the beginning of the next song kind of adds to it because like the spaciness cuts out and then there is feedback, but even the feedback is quiet. It's not like shrill, I hate God feedback, but then it fucking explodes. Fucking Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean is the heaviest song that I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Actually, this version of Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean is the second heaviest song I've ever heard. And the heaviest song I've ever heard is when they re-recorded this song for a compilation.
It's the first one I ever heard. It's literally the first one. You mentioned playing also Burning Black Holes and Dark Memories. That was the other one. But this one is, I can remember like sitting with my legs crossed on that person's floor and looking up at their TV with that Gilead Media cover. I'm like, what is fucking going on? Because this is like the heaviest part of the record thus far, if not the heaviest song on the whole record.
This might be the most direct song on the record for sure. Like
definitely.
there's no fat on this track at all. This might even be where the band kind of hits its stride of what Thou is going to become. This definitely sounds more to me as an outsider in vein to maybe like Into the Marshlands or Ode to Physical Pain or something off of Heathen, which is like a brutally heavy record, which is funny to say like anything in this band's catalog isn't. Like just the way it kicks in and it's that driving, droning chord change. They're letting those lower registers kind of drone on and they're just moving the notes on the higher strings to add that almost, just more of, it adds more to that just suffocating kind of feel.
Like this song is very pop song, like skeleton. Like this song has a verse, chorus, and then like a bridge. But I think you put the same thing for like I Was Ignored and Judged and Cast Down. But I thought that about this song. It's like very straightforward written song.
The other track was the track I noticed it first. Maybe on first listen, I just noticed it. But and I don't know what it is about this track and the next track. Maybe it's because those tracks were written a little bit later in sequencing. Maybe the B-side was written a little bit later. The A-side definitely has tracks that may be a bit older in that scope. But it just shows that you can still use that kind of pop song structure, right? In the sense of even something as extreme as this, and it works as long as you do it. As long as you do it and it doesn't feel like you're doing it, right? As long as you put it in that structure and it doesn't just feel like, here's the 5 parts to the song, boom, 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 boom. It works so well when you can listen back at it and go, wait a minute, there's a chorus, there's a pre-chorus, there's hooks. Like, what are we doing here? This isn't supposed to be this way.
There's like a bit of an I Hate God riff kind of halfway through the song.
Absolutely there is.
A very crushing breakdown where I thought you could almost hear like the wind being moved or like the strings just rattling off of the instrument.
And the fucking Brian, the vocals like this song is among the bleakest of that, even Thou songs. Like the lyrics of the first verse is, "This freezing chamber is inescapable. These ashen walls are insurmountable. empty sockets see nothing but black, black, black abyss. That's the whole first verse. But when they do that fucking breakdown in the middle of the song, he's just screaming, "Why have we been abandoned?" And that, like,
God.
it's just like, holy fuck, why have we been abandoned?
It's, you know, there are 3 bands that I could probably say when I think of are the heaviest bands of all time. Neurosis being one. I would say Cannibal Corpse being another one. I may not enjoy their catalog near as much as some others, but I do. Primitive Man being the third one, because of the sheer sonic assault you're getting from that band. This band, based purely off of just this fucking track, falls into category 4, because it's like the lyrics that Swindle just brought up and being able to know when to play stuff like that to get dynamic effect. Again, there's a track on Through Silver and Blood that Scott Kelly is screaming as beloved or as above, so below, but Dave Edwardson's coming behind him and screaming it in unison. It's terrifying. It's bone chilling. And when you can get something as, you know, this is just a bunch of punk guys and, you know, people like just playing shit that they love, and you can get that effect out of something that is already on a extremely heavy record. Like, come on. Like, come on. This song in particular, the ending makes me think of, and I got it in the docs just for comedic effect, but there's a scope where, like, in Greek mythology, you know, basically all the Titans get buried in Tartarus, which is underneath the sea. And it makes me think of, like, the lines that Swindle just brought up of that. Like, how do we get out of here? Why were we put here? What's going on? It's like, fuck. Oh.
This was also the track that I thought Terry's maybe had like the best performance on. Again, just kind of getting to go wild, since you do have such a straightforward kind of riff before the feedback kind of fade out ending of this song, which leads us into another wonderful track. I Was Ignored and Judged and Cast Down.
My favorite track on the record.
I would agree. I think, you know, certainly I'm definitely biased to fucking Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean, but kind of re-listening back to this, I do have a lot of favorites from this band's catalog, but I think being able to sit with this one maybe a couple times, listening to it in before the episode, I definitely have like a newfound appreciation for the record and this song in particular, which kind of starts out with a lot of like Kirk Crowbar in the beginning, in my opinion. I don't know.
That riff, it's been a while since I listened to this record, and I texted y'all, but like as soon as that riff kicked in, I could hum it. Just like it came back immediately. That riff is only played 3 fucking times in the song. It's played twice there at the beginning. It's played one time, literally once, before the song like spaces out again.
They know what they're doing. Like they get it. It's, again, you speed the songs up and like you play the structure the same way. Like it's technically challenging shit. Like there's some weird stuff on this record. But this is the track where I thought Terry was going the fuck off. Like there's points in this where like I'm listening to him, I'm like, where's the snare? Where's the snare? And like I can just hear him fucking losing it. And it's like, all right, what? God, where are we going with this? This is great. And then like that, I think this is the same riff you're talking about, Swindle, but it sounds like Remission era, like Mastodon, like some of those weird low tuned, like kind of bendy, slidey riffs and stuff that are on it. And it's like, ooh, okay. We're cooking with peanut oil. You're welcome.
The other thing about this record too, we kind of mentioned earlier with that like lead kind of tone, that it definitely comes back on here. I don't know if he's like tapping or using some like pinch harmonics or whatever.
I think in this song there is tapping for sure.
Yeah. It's really cool. It really adds like a unique quality that I don't think really comes back on other records. Like I don't really recall there being that same sort of like lead line in this way. I don't, or like that kind of tapping or whatever. Some of the parts that are written on this record, which is cool. I think it definitely like kind of makes it unique. It's like, hey, this is where this band started, and it had kind of some weird shit on it like that. But I don't recall ever really hearing that on some later releases.
Obviously, this band's really good about using the bridge for what it actually is, which is essentially a kind of a key change or kind of a breakdown of the track, right? So when you've got low-tuned guitars, a lot of distortion, a lot of layers, typically the instrument that gets buried the most is the bass, right? I've realized that there's certain albums you can probably hear Mitch a little bit kind of more in the mix. He's got a different fuzz that cuts through, or maybe he's mixed differently. But this is the track where I really hear him on the bridge a lot. You can hear it. It's this very forward moving kind of, it's not necessarily a walking bass line, but it's definitely doing these melodic kind of like moving forward. Like it's an ascending bass line over these descending riffs. And there's so much low end behind this band that the bass is obviously going to get just plastered in there. And it was nice to hear that subtle kind of bass run right there for sure.
The part before it gets spacey in this song, there's like a part that really fucking repeats, and it reminds me of the Slint episode where you're talking about like sometimes you just play a part until it makes people uneasy, like and then you move on after playing the same part for like 40 seconds. They did that for this song.
There's some definite like the only band I could compare to that does like changes like this when it comes to their song structures and like parts is Soylent Green. There's some stuff in like God, their album titles are so long, but I'll just reference the Contamination album. That's just like, here's a part, we'll never play it again. We played it for 0.5 seconds. Now we're on to the next 6 parts. And there's kind of a vibe to that on here.
Then you get to the final track of the album, Monstrance. It's very slow, very huge, again, very sustaining, very good conclusion to the album, I think.
Yeah.
Like a proper conclusion.
It ends on a fucking heavy note. And that's understatement of the year for something like this. I think in the notes I put the opening riff sounds like the title of the track. It just sounds like just massive, and it just blows up. There's some like post-punk kind of stuff in this track that I thought was pretty fucking cool. And maybe I'm, speaking out of, term on that one. There's like these kind of like octaves that are played in the midst of the song. That's very post-punky to me. And the bass the bass gets to kind of play over it, playing these counter melody of sort. And it really mixes with those kind of earthquake kind of riffs that are in the song, balancing it out. And I just thought that was cool. I thought it was cool to add that type of texture to a track like this. Definitely, again, falling on maybe some of the other influences that the band has aside from just being a massively heavy band.
There was a riff that stuck out in there's the ending riff of this, which really stuck out. But before that, there's a riff that stuck out to me because it's like a one string riff, and there are lots of open notes in it, and is very much not a normal thou riff. I was like, oh damn.
Oh fuck! There's a Slayer solo on this song. Dead center of it. You can hear it, but it's like he's not playing anything. He's just going for it. And I'm like, that's fucking cool. It's over. Yeah. So they play this kind of big slidey riff, and I might be wrong. It may just be all these open notes being played. Because of the low tuning, it sounds like it's being bent in certain ways. But if you listen to it, they do different variations of that part kind of in the middle of the song. There's a solo that's kind of under it in the mix that is just like played on the bridge pickup with no tone change difference. It's just that. And it's like, I get it. All right. It's cool.
The last riff reminded me of like the like jangly guitar riff reminded me of Soundgarden, but and then it gets like a big Soundgarden, and then the last lines of the fucking album are like, you were right, you're not a good person. You're not worth my time. You were right. And then like the album is just over.
It's just
like,
cut.
Yeah,
Definitely,
fucking.
like you said, there's some very straightforward songs. I from what I understand, it's like, definitely like struggles with class and maybe like forces that are kind of outside of our control in a lot of ways, like bigger structures and institutions. But then, the music just kind of puts that home. There are 2 bonus tracks for this record. The original release through One Eye clocks in at about 35 minutes, 22 seconds. But after the release, they put it out on a CD, like a limited tour edition.
It takes the album from 35 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Swindle and I were talking off air about this because when we did the High on Fire episode, we were getting ready for this and we're like, oh, Tyrant's, I think Swindle was like, Tyrant's only like 35 minutes long. I was like, not this one. This one says 59.
Well, yeah. So it's important to note that What Blood Still Flows from These Veins and Acceptance were not on the original release of the record, but they did appear as like 2 bonus tracks on some CD versions. It didn't appear on the Southern Lord reissue from 2009, but it has appeared on like every version of the album since. I like them. They're fun. I said in one of my notes for What Blood Still Flows from These Veins, I don't know if I'll ever make this comparison in another one of these episodes, but it reminded me of a Kiss song. There's a song called Black Diamond.
Yes.
And the end of the song, it ends with this kind of like drony riff that it sounds like somebody's quite literally like detuning a guitar.
Oh,
and
what's the Nirvana track?
It's just boom, like it.
Endless
Yeah,
Endless?
it just
It's do.
Well, it's but the Kiss one's like more sustained out. It's literally just
Gotcha.
one chord kind of thing, and it feels like it's getting lower and slower with each one. Kind of reminded me that Acceptance, of course, is an instrumental, but
Oh man.
I think personally, while those are cool as like bonus tracks and stuff, and maybe the band feels differently, that's totally understandable. I think Monstrance is like just a very natural conclusion to the record to me.
It's a better ending to the record for sure. If Acceptance was on the album, that would have been my favorite track just because of how different it is from the rest of the album. But it's also the fact of it is so different. It didn't necessarily need to be on the record. Even the track before that, which What Blood Still Flows from These Veins. Forgive us, this band is very prone to have very long song titles. So it's like, all right, shit, I got to remember this. Even that feels like a separation from the album a little bit. But yeah, it definitely seems like the start of this band being as prolific as they are, of just going like, hey, if they're out there, let's just put it on whatever we've got. We're re-releasing this album for like the 4th time. Let's put it on there.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but one of the guitar parts in Acceptance, because it's like a quieter, jammy, spacey one,
Yeah.
right? Isn't I felt like one of the guitar parts was the same guitar part from the first song, Tyrant.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
I
in
think
there.
It was just like re-bringing back that guitar
Yep.
part.
Interesting.
It's
okay.
there's a motif that's kind of that's throughout the whole record, and it's just you'll hear it slightly that I've noticed in a few tracks, but this one in particular has a repeating motif in it that was on that track.
Definitely played some shows after the release of this record. The one great thing that I love about their website is that they have a big tour archive or show archive of like pretty much all of the shows that they've played. It starts at May 11th, 2007. We obviously discussed that this band started in 2005. They definitely played shows without Brian. So I'm assuming this is probably the first show with Brian. But as far as the release of this record in 2007, they did like a brief tour with We Need to Talk, which is Andy's other project, like we discussed earlier. They had like one EP, I believe, also released on One Eye Records, Brian's label. And then they did kind of like a US tour. They basically did like a month where they started in like early September to early October, hitting dates along the West Coast, the Midwest. They played with various bands along the way, including some bands that they would release some splits with, like Mahoram Atta.
That band only released like one or two things ever.
Oh, really?
And one of them was the thing with Thou.
That's awesome. And they also did some shows with Cower as well. So I don't know if that's where the connection came, because we'll get into that in a little bit. But as far as the record's concerned, I mean, it's really cool to hear how this band started and where it's ultimately going to lead. It's not entirely too far off, but there, again, like kind of like I mentioned, I feel like there exists some things on here that don't necessarily pop up later,
Right.
as they kind of
it sounds like a first record. It does. It sounds like a band's first record. All of the influences they all have are in here, maybe more prevalent and present in others. But what's really cool about this album and this being a first record is they've already kind of figured out what the Thou sound is, right? Like Brian's vocals, those crazy low-tuned guitars, and the effect of how they use that. Like those are two big building blocks of this band. Cause like the minute you like Swindle could put on a Thou track at any point, and I may not hear the riff at first, but the minute I hear those vocals, I'm like, oh, this is a Thou track, obviously. And now it's more tuned to like, if I hear that kind of low tuned guitar, I know what I'm hearing. I already know. And I liked this record so much when I heard it, I bought the fucking thing.
Oh, nice.
Like, oh, that's awesome.
Like, this is a great record. There's a couple other albums we've done that kind of throughout, but like this one was like, yep, going in now. Click.
All right, we've talked about Tyrant. We need to get into our second part of this episode. We definitely didn't want to gloss over some of the covers, collabs, EPs, and splits this band has done. I think our goal of the deep dive in general will definitely be more focused on the full-length releases, because there's just a more cohesive theme, maybe a vibe, but a large part of this band's discography is covers, splits with bands that they love, different collabs and stuff like that. So Swindle and I basically went through and picked a couple songs from each tiered thing, some of our favorite songs. We'll kind of go into them. Swindle, do you want to start off with maybe your first couple tracks from the EPs, some of your favorite EPs this band has done?
Yeah. My first pick is New Orleans as a Whole from the Sacrifice EP. That EP came out in 2014, and now it's on the Algiers compilation because all this stuff is on comps pretty much. I think the Sacrifice EP was released by Robotic Empire. This song, kind of like a lot of the songs in Tyrant, has like a post-metal feel at the beginning of it. There are a lot of variations of that riff when it's quieter, and then they kick in kind of the same part, just louder, but they're still just doing variations of it. And it kind of does that for half of the song, and then the back half of the song is like wild shit is kind of happening, but I halfway don't know what the fuck is happening because there's just harsh noise on top of Thou. So it's kind of like just a wall of sound, and I fucking love that. My other EP pick is The Severed Genitals of Every Rapist Hang Bleeding from These Trees from the Maleficent's Retribution EP, which came out in 2008, but now it's on the Oakland comp. This EP was put out by Feast of Tentacles from the band Moloch, which Thou also did a split with. First of all, just the name, you get a pretty good fucking idea of what the song is about.
There's an image. There's an image that kind of goes to that.
Yeah, and this is one of those songs that, like, the message is very in the lyrics is very forthcoming. You don't have to think too hard about it. It's just like, you shouldn't use your art to get power over women, and you shouldn't sexually assault them. And if you do, like, maybe a little,
You know, Thou's always been pretty direct with their message, guys.
Yeah.
I was hoping you guys would catch that, but you didn't. Okay. It's kind of a take on a little Nicki line, but all right.
Oh yeah, no, I cleared that
didn't.
shit from my brain every time I see
Yeah.
it.
That's a shame for you guys. But
Yeah,
Thal's always been pretty.
Damn.
Thal is pretty straightforward with a lot of their messages. Like, you don't have to dig too hard to know what's kind of going on. I'm sure some of it is some of Brian's lyrics can be a little more over our heads when it comes to, you know, influences from writers and poetry and all that. And maybe we're completely just overthinking it. And he's just like, I don't really do any of that shit. I just write what I'm feeling. And this is how I felt when I read something at one point. And I like that dynamic of what it is. Like, it's musically intelligent, it's lyrically intelligent, but it's not pandering, right? Like, it's not just, for lack of a better word, he's not just saying castrate the rapist over and over and over and over again. Although that would be a fun thing to like hear in a track, but like it's pandering, right? Like, I would expect that in maybe I would expect that in like a death metal track. And not so much this still has that thinking man's mentality to it. And I really enjoy the imagery he portrays with his lyrics a lot.
It's not necessarily stuff that you haven't heard before, or like things that you can find, like, relate to. Somebody actually said this in an interview I read recently. And it's like, it's not that I write about stuff that is like super out there or like super hard to understand, but it's like maybe approached in a unique way. And that's it. Yeah. He's doing it in his own way. And I really appreciate Brian's input to this band for sure. My first pick for EPs is going to be Helen Hill Will Have Her Revenge on New Orleans, which was originally featured on the To the Chaos Wizard EP from 2011. It was released on Vendetta Records, which is like a DIY label based in Berlin. This song is also on the Algiers compilation from 2013. This song has two references. The most obvious one being Nirvana's Frances Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle from In Utero in 93. It also makes kind of a reference to an actual thing that happened. Helen Hill, who was an activist, filmmaker, writer, teacher, social activist, was tragically murdered in her home in New Orleans. So it's kind of tackles that a little bit, or at least makes reference to it. I like this song a lot because not only because of the subject matter is pretty intense, and it makes it very real when it is like about a real person who, you know, was unfortunately killed in that way. It's also very percussive and primal, and it's a very rhythmically driving song. It's kind of like that less is more thing. And through most of the song, or at least like the good portion of the song, it is literally just Brian and the drums in the forefront with some of the guitar in the background. Although it does kind of explode into that much later. It's very Neurosis-esque, I would say.
100%.
And just repetitive. It's very repetitive in that it uses a lot of variations on the same riff.
Yes.
So
changes the feel up a little bit.
Definitely. Then there's like some kind of like what Swindle said earlier in the episode about playing a riff and playing it over and over again, where it's just unsettling. And then there's like just like this very harsh kind of noise aspect to the song as well. I definitely appreciate that. In the lyrics, there are some references. Obviously, again, they reference Nirvana. They quite literally lift the lyric from the Nirvana song, "She'll come back as fire and burn all the liars, leave a blanket of ash on the ground." And then they also use a reference from Taxi Driver from 76. Just before that line, it's "Someday a real rain will come and wash all the scum off the streets." So there's just a couple things there. This band is definitely known to lift lines from different artists or different things. We'll get into that in just a moment, but
I didn't mean to cut you off, but like what I caught from this track in particular, obviously when I saw the title track, I misread it. I read it as Helen Hunt. Like immediately, like I looked at it and actually did the old man thing where you like stand back from it for a second. Like, I'm not reading this right. And, you know, obviously you mentioned Helen Hill, the activist and actress and all of that. And it made me think of the Black Dahlia murder, not necessarily the band, but the subject of this terrible thing happening to a young person, and just like it going unsolved.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with her work, but it's just kind of adds to the, you know, this is a, Louisiana based band. They're talking about things that kind of are in their area. My second song, The Hammer, which was featured on the Inconsolable EP in 2018. This is the second EP in a trilogy that they did kind of leading up to the full length Mages in 2019. But they had the House Primordial first, released on Robotic Empire, which is kind of like more ambient noise, kind of more in line with the body. Then there's Inconsolable, which was a co-release with Community Records and Gilead Media, definitely more in the slowcore kind of like folk sound, I would say. A lot of acoustics, some clean vocals. And then there's Rhea Silvia, also released in 2018 on Deathwish Inc., more in line with kind of their grunge influences like Alice in Chains and such. But I like this track because when this came out, I was just so blown away by it. I was blown away by it. I wasn't surprised that the band would do it because they had just made it known that they don't like keep themselves in any particular box. But it was at least maybe so jarringly different from anything that I had heard before. Like they really hadn't done an album just full of, clean vocals and sort of like, they're like this song in particular has like violins on it and stuff like that. You can hear all of the like rattlings of the acoustic instruments on this. This is the first appearance of their current member, Casey Stafford, who, would wind up on future releases as well. They are also in another project with Brian titled The World is a Vampire. They did some splits with Cloud. I think they did a split with Cloud Rat, some EPs and such. Treadles, or Treadles, I don't really remember how that's supposed to be pronounced. They played in Bowling Green one time. That was really cool.
People Proof played with Treadles.
That's right. You did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good time. And then Woozy. But Casey adds like not only just a third guitar, but a whole other dynamic. You can really hear them on the Emma Ruth Rundle collab. I really like some of their moments of, I think it's like Monolith is a really killer track in my opinion.
That whole song.
Yeah.
Banger.
Yeah. Awesome. You also have Emily McWilliams, who is the kind of mastermind behind another project called Silver Godling, and basically a longtime Thou collaborator at this point, stretching from the earliest moments of the band to the most current, kind of giving that collective feel that Dylan mentioned earlier. Talking about lifting lines from other songs too. There's another song on this EP I definitely wanted to give mention to called Phallostate, which just totally rips a Jim Croce line, which I know Swindle loves.
I fucking love that. I do.
There are sections of that song that also sound like Depeche Mode. There's like All I Ever Wanted from Violator. It's like not quite there, but it's like enough where you're like, oh, is it gonna do it? And then it does it. I think I saw a quote from Brian that said, when we were writing it, we were going through a dark time, listening to a lot of Jim Croce and Emma Ruth Rundle, her last record with Marriages. I definitely think of Thou in terms of a sad, melancholy band rather than an angry band, which I thought was really cool. It should be more depressing than the Pygmy Lush record, Old Friends. That was kind of the goal. I have not listened to that record, but I definitely want to check it out now.
It's funny to hear from somebody in the band group collective state what the band should be viewed as, because, and I'm not downplaying what he views because he's the artist, but it is always interesting to hear that of like, yeah, we're more of a band that's melancholy, and it's like, are you really? Are you sure about that? Are you sure? I mean, there's a lot. There is, man, you've been mad a lot, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the melancholia. But obviously, I'm only coming from the perspective of maybe hearing 3 records from this band.
I mean, they definitely are sad. There's also a really good cover of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young on that. Find the Cost of Freedom, which I had no fucking clue that was a cover until I listened to the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young album. And Thou did 2 covers of Pygmy Lush that are on that comp, the cover comp
Well, maybe we should just get into our cover picks, because I feel like there are a lot of instances where, well, one, this band has covered a lot of bands, some that might seem, to be expected, maybe is the wrong word, but some that are not as surprising and some that are just like, whoa, what happened here? Or like moments where the band got me into a lot of music. So I don't know, Swindle, do you want to take the lead on this one? What were your first 2 covers on this?
My 2 covers, my first cover is Endless Nameless by Nirvana. The original song came out as a kind of bonus track at the end of Nevermind. The Thou version came out on the Whatever Nevermind comp by Robotic Empire. The thing I wrote for this song is it seems like Nirvana, Kurt Cobain wrote the song Endless Nameless with the knowledge that Thou would one day exist, because it just sounds like Thou. Like,
yeah,
there's not even really a riff. It's just fucking heavy, and there's just guitar noises, and it's just Brian screaming, and that's the song.
I think I first became aware of what the band sounded like based off the Something in the Way cover.
Yeah.
I think that might have been one of the first things I heard from the band. That and maybe the Supernaut cover. Or no, is it Supernaut or Into the Void?
I think they've done Into the Void for sure. Yeah.
Oh Christ.
Yeah. I mean, they just have like at least 5 Sabbath covers, but the Something in the Way cover I really enjoy. I especially love there's a live recording at like St. Vitus from a handful of years ago with King Woman on vocals that like blew me away. If anybody has a moment after this video, definitely check it out. It's so good.
When the most recent Batman movie came out and I was sitting in the theater and kept hearing the motif of Something in the Way play, I was like, man, they missed an opportunity. That band could have that movie would have made fans of a lot of really depressed young men of this band. And I just thought there was a missed opportunity. Maybe in the sequel, they'll bring it back and they can use Thou's version.
My second cover is The Lasting Dose, which is a Crowbar cover. It came out originally on Sonic XS in its purest form. It was released on the Ria Silvia album, the final track. And literally the thing I wrote about this song is I like this song because it's a Crowbar song covered by Thou.
Yep.
And that is my note.
It's a straightforward cover. There's really no change. It's just the vocals and the production are slightly different.
Right.
It's like, yep, okay.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
And the last vocal, I feel what is the line? I felt the pain of a brutal war. I felt the pain of a lasting war. Brian just fucking screaming that. Like, okay, yeah, I'm sold.
In that Revolver video I referenced earlier where they're talking about the covers, one of the guitar players brought up that the best cover of all time and the only cover that should ever be mentioned is Crowbar doing Dreamweaver. And I was like, I get it. Get it.
Oh, it's so good. I have a couple covers as well. Get Me Out, which was originally performed by Cower. The Thou cover appeared on Big City, the EP from 2011. This was like a self-released EP. Cower, I didn't know Cower before I heard this cover. This is the first fucking time I ever heard this song. Cower was like a doom power violence band from like Portland, which apparently they had played some shows with. The Big City EP was eventually used as like a one part of a split they actually did do with Cower, which I thought was awesome. It's called War is the Force That Gives Us Meaning, a 2-part analysis of personal and interpersonal conflict, which was released in 2011. So you basically have Act 1, which is Burn the Banks, that's the Cower side, and then Act 2, which is Big City, the Thou side as well. This song also appears on the Algiers compilation. Definitely had not heard of Cower before this, but the Thou cover, like many of their covers, at least kind of tempt you to go back and listen to the original source material. But their version of it is so intense and so visceral. I mean, that feedback, like via I Hate God with Brian just shouting like, one more second,
fucking wasted.
It is so
Put
crazy.
this bullet in my brain.
That's the line that stuck out to me. Was like, all right.
And then that like dum dum da 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 boom boom.
Yeah.
Though like the real riff is like not even a minute long. It's like 30 seconds and 45.
Yep.
Like it's done. It's fucking over. And you're like, I gotta hear it again just because it's awesome.
On that EP, thou covered this Cower track. Did Cower cover a Thou track by chance?
I don't believe so. No, I think
Damn,
it was just
that would have been like
fun.
a great juxtaposition. Well, like a lot of bands have done that. I always am reminded of like obviously a completely different style of music, but Hot Water Music and Alkaline Trio did a split cover where they covered each other's like most famous songs. And like, damn, that would have been something interesting. A Power Violence band covering a Thou track. It's like, all right. And they pick like a 12-minute track would be the thing.
It would be like 3 minutes for Cower.
Just
kind of a closer thing to that though would be my second pick, Prayer to God, which is a shellac cover. This appeared on a split with a band called Great Falls in 2015. Basically, both bands cover a shellac song. So that was cool to hear like both of their interpretations of it. I don't even know if I'd listened to shellac much, even though being from the Chicagoland area, I didn't really grow up listening to a lot of that sort of like post rock, math rock kind of music. But I love both versions of the song. If you listen to like Shellac's 1000 Hertz, I've like referenced it multiple times in multiple episodes, that beginning of like Shellac of North America. Like,
right. Yeah.
And it's kind of at the fault of this song. Like I heard this, loved it, had to check the original, the album, and fell in love with it. So definitely a really, really cool cover that they did.
Does the track make you want to wear your guitar strap the right way? He's right about a lot of things. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, just tie it around like a belt. What are we doing? Steve, get real. That is very much like Silent Generation shit. Well, pants are falling down. Better use a string or something.
So now we have some splits. We have some splits to go through there, Swindle.
My first song is Don't Vote. This, along with one of the songs you're going to talk about, is from the Degradation of Human Life split with that Mohoram Atta band. Don't Vote is fast for Thou.
That's a punk track.
Immediately fast riffs, hardcore drums. The bass drums are so fucking loud, especially when they do the double bass, kind of in the, I don't know if it's halftime, but like the snare drums halftime, but the bass drums are like fucking loud in the mix. But pretty much so there's like one main riff, but every other part of the song kind of exists to just throw off the rhythm of the main riff. And I love that.
When I saw this track and I went, all right, the title already screams like this is right up Swindle's alley.
Yeah.
And then I heard the song and was like, yep. All right, we're good. Like this
checks out.
This is it. This is I really enjoyed I really enjoyed kind of like Val's take on like punk and hardcore. Obviously with the Cower track and this one, because it's like, oh, okay. All right. This is more so in the vein of maybe something you mentioned about liking music that can be confrontational or like make someone not want to listen to it. Like it's that kind of like you're dipping your toe into that. And I do enjoy that about this, which has me really excited about the new record. Cause it's like, oh, we might get like their version of, oh, what did they say? It's their take on Youth Crew, which is going to be like, come on.
That's interesting. Sure.
So I thoroughly enjoyed this track a lot.
Yeah. Also so Austin's going to talk about a song on that, right? one of the other songs on that is "Screaming at a Wall" by Minor Threat is on the same split.
Jesus Christ.
Anyone that knows me knows that I'm a sucker for Minor Threat. So I also love that. My second split pick is "The Mystery of Contradictions," which originally was released with as a split with Barghest in 2015 by Elder Magic Records, but was re-released as "I Hate Thou" by William Street record label, which I think is Adult Swim.
It is. Yeah, they have it was like the Adult Swim like singles club, kind of reminiscent of like maybe Sub Pop. Well, every week or so they would release like a single by a band, and yeah, it was like you could go on their website and listen to it. But yeah, it was like it's like Adult Swim singles basically.
That track, although it was like the only one I couldn't find on one of the streaming services, I went to Bandcamp and it was just, I mean, it was right there. But I was actually outside walking one of our dogs, and I like had my headphones on and like was drinking a cup of coffee and just stopped. Like, I don't know where the dog went. I don't know where the coffee was going. I was just in the middle of my yard, and it was beautiful out the day I was in it. I was just in the middle of my yard going, oh God, no. Like I had taken an edible too strong or something.
It starts off just bass and drums, and it's so fucking slow. And then everybody else comes in, and like when the guitars come in, they seem like they're just dissonant with each other right off the rip. And there's a really great line in the song I fucking love. Just "Our mistake was in seeking resolution." Halfway through, there's just assaulting feedback. And then near the end, they change to 12/8. Like there's just an abrupt change in time signature to 12/8, where they start swinging. The song completely falls apart a couple times, but they come back in. And then at the end, there's like an "I Hate God" sounding part. And then it's a huge version of an "I Hate God" sounding part. Fucking great song.
I am so glad you brought that up, because that's something I wanted to bring up about the band as a whole. They do this great thing where it sounds like the train is going to run off the tracks the entire time. Like the song is going to get away from them, or like, so like, and they do it, and it's supposed to be that way. Yeah. Like that's what it sounds like. And that is one of the coolest things. The only other band I've heard do that, and I'm sure there are many bands that do it really well, but like the first 2 or 3 Cannibal Corpse records are like that, to where it sounds like the train's going to just come off the tracks, but it doesn't. It like they get right to the peak of it and they bring it back in. And that was really fucking cool about this band. But this track like is there are a lot of tracks that this band does that don't make you don't put you in a really good headspace. This is definitely one of them. This is a great track. Good pick. This is my favorite of all like the kind of EP stuff.
They did a performance that Austin and I often reference for Adult Swim. They did like
in front of the fish thing.
Them. Well, it's a green screen.
Okay.
And they have like green masks on, so all their faces are blocked. And I think, if I'm thinking correctly, some of those songs are going to be on the album, or like reworked versions of those songs are going to be on the new one.
Right. Yeah. I think that was for like, they have Adult Swim Fest, and that was like a year where they essentially had to cancel it. And so it was like all online, and you basically had to tune in or at a certain time in order to view it. And so, yeah, a lot of that stuff, I believe Swindle's right, where the stuff that will be performed, some version of that, maybe some ideas from that set will be included. I think you can actually watch that full set now on YouTube. But yeah, such a cool thing with all of it's almost like space kind of going through like all of their green screen like heads or whatever. Very, very cool.
2 things like adjacent to that were like Dying Fetus being on Adult Swim and the fish thing being behind them. And I think Exhumed was on Eric Andre.
Yes. Yeah, it was like Eric Eric Andre put it was Exhumed and like the Supremes or something like that. So
Yes.
you basically have the
Yes.
Supremes singing and Exhumed, and like the dude is just making himself throw up on the ground. It's so funny. I got two from some splits as well. Again, like Swindle mentioned, the Mahoram Atta split, Degradation of Human Life. My song that I picked, and this was kind of hard because I feel like we had some crossover, and maybe I like strayed away from certain picks because I knew you were going to do it. But I love this song so much. I Am the Leviathan has such a crazy opening kind of riff where it's like it's like I think he says like 10,000 years. Like, what do we have?
Oh yeah,
and it's like it builds like right out of the gate. I love it. Mahoram Atta was a hardcore band from Santa Cruz, California. I found out through that some of those members are involved in other projects that I have come to enjoy within the past couple of years. One of them was a $20 spin band that had a record, Runelust, as well as the kind of like very avant-garde kind of black metal project, Yellow Eyes. So some members of this project ended up in those bands. This was a collaborative release between Feast of Tentacles and Halo of Flies. Feast of Tentacles, like Swindle mentioned, is Chris from Moloch's label. They also released some of the World as a Vampire records that Brian and Casey are a part of. But yeah, Don't Vote, also a favorite. It also has the song Shorties with MP40s, is also a great song. They would eventually appear on the Rendon singles comp, so that's a good one. But my favorite song, and I'm not talking about from splits, not talking about from EPs, I'm talking about my favorite fucking Thou song ever, is called Smoke Pigs. When I heard this song, absolutely fucking blown away. So good, from the subject matter to the riff to the approach vocally. This was a song that originally was featured on the very first split Thou ever did, Thrive and Decay, with a band called Black September. This was a kind of black and death metal band from Chicago. They were active from like 2006 to 2013, but this was like a release that was co-released on like at least like 5 different fucking labels. And then the intro is like always, I love samples in song. This band has definitely done it, but this one comes from the film Shooter from 2007, where it's like the end of the movie where Mark Wahlberg just blows a fucking bullet hole through Ned Beatty's head. He's like a senator or whatever, as they mentioned in the song. This would also be featured on the Oakland singles comp, but they released a re-recorded version of this song as well as some other songs from back in the day with the modern lineup of the group. It's like I don't know which one I like better, because I like the original a lot, but when I listen to the new one, it kind of reminds me of like the first time I ever heard it live, which is like, it's just got more of a fury to it. It's got more like of an energy to it. It also has a new sample added to it, which you might know from Willow. It's a clip from Willow, 1988. Someone also decided to throw in a random line from the Violent Femme song Kiss Off, like, this is going to go down on your permanent record. Oh yeah. I love it.
I fucking love that re-recording because Tyler Coburn from Yautja and the re-recording of Get Me Out and the re-recording of fucking Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean. Like, I'll turn off of I'll like close out Spotify and open my like phone MP3 player just so I can listen to the re-recordings of those songs while I'm lifting weights, and I'm just like hate whispering fucking Get Me Out lyrics at Planet Fitness.
Yeah, Tyler is like, you know, such a lauded drummer in the scene in general, but like, yeah, his energy that he brings to Thou is so cool, you know, obviously with Yautja and Narwhal and bands like that. But I remember when I heard the song for the first time, we saw Thou at Cafe Coco, which was like a coffee house that used to just host hardcore and metal shows in the back room, which was like also surprisingly soundproofed very well. Because you
Yeah.
walk through the front door.
It really was.
It's like a 24-hour coffee house, and they'd have like a band like Thou playing, and you'd only ever hear it if the door opened. Like it sounded, you could not hear it from the front of the house. Like I never understood how they were able to do that so well. I also remember it being so fucking hot in that room.
Oh, yeah.
Someone literally collapsed in front of me. They were just so hot. But when I felt like fulfilled when I heard this for the first time, for sure.
Yeah.
It was a show with Thou, Noisem, and actually one of Tyler's old bands, Rain, I believe it's called. I could be wrong, but Tyler used to play in this like kind of black metal band, as some of our friends in Pelagius mentioned on that episode of the show. But so they've been in contact with each other for quite some time, and now it's kind of cool to see this lineup of the band about to release, you know, a new album together, which is very, very cool. One other thing I wanted to mention, obviously another big part of this band is the collabs that they do. You know, they've done a handful with bands like The Body. We had some more recent ones with like Emma Ruth Rundle, Mizmor. You know, I don't know if I have one in particular favorite. I like all of them to a degree. Maybe I'm a little bit more partial to the Emma one, just because we got to see it performed in a very, very early stage of like the writing process. Maybe even like some of the first time those songs were performed live.
I am kind of a caveman, and to be honest, I didn't know about the existence of Emma Ruth Rundle until they announced they were doing a collab with her. So I like listened to Dark Horse, the album, and I fucking fell in love with Emma's music. So like, thank you to Thou for putting me on to Emma Ruth Rundle, and thank you to Emma for making art.
Yeah, I think that one was cool, like to see those worlds kind of, you know, cross over and make like this kind of hybrid band in a lot of ways. I like some of the releases with The Body. I don't know if The Body was just never really something I was able to quite get into. I kind of like when they are paired with another group, like with the collab. I will say, without these collaborations with The Body and the influence that The Body has like clearly had on Thou, maybe you would have some more collabs, maybe you wouldn't. Regardless, this I think was kind of the thing that really opened the floodgates for them to experiment with other musicians that they really look up to. So you got to give it to The Body there. Love the collab with Mizmor too.
Oh,
I think that was a really
God.
awesome one, and some of those songs are definitely my favorite.
Jeez. I love that. And in contrast to like how long that record is, I love that. I knew what I was getting into when that thing was released. I knew precisely what I was going to have to listen to and what I was going to enjoy. We'll say that thing dropped during a period of time when like getting vinyl pressed was a pain. And it took almost like a year for us to get that. I think 9 months or so.
Yeah. I mean, with all the, you know, lockdown and just everything with this pandemic, it's definitely made it hard. I mean, we saw that live performance of the Emma Ruth Rundle music, the collaborations with her, and that performance was like a year before the pre-orders came out. Then everything got delayed, and so we didn't really even see that record and the Helm of Sorrow for like a year probably after like we ordered it, which is totally understandable. Like things got so fucked up. But yeah, definitely a band that is like super cool to have physical releases of, because they just care so much about what goes into, you know, like the layout.
Yeah,
and
this band cares. You know, they're punk rock kids. I'm assuming that they're all into very nerdy forms of entertainment. Be it if you follow them on social media, comic books, graphic novels, like they're always highlighting stuff like that in different projects. So they're very, they put a lot of care and time and effort into what the presentation of an EP will look like, a 7-inch, a full length. Is it going to be a gatefold? What's going to be in the gatefold? You know, I really appreciate that about a lot of art, especially a lot of underground artists when they do give that attention to that, because we all grew up during the era when you'd buy a CD and you'd open it up and it would just be like, all right, here's the lyrics on a black piece of formatted, you know, card set, and here's white font. there's kind of a cover. Okay, deal with it. It's so nice to get like bands that are like, hey, here's this really extravagant piece of art we're putting on the cover. This also, if you buy one of the first 100 copies, you get a slipcase that's a different artwork that transforms into a dinosaur or, you know, whatever it may be. Like, I'm so happy when bands do that shit.
I think that kind of wraps up our discussion on the first part of our deep dive here, discussing their debut record Tyrant, some of the backstory on the band, some of our favorite little offshoot things like EP splits and collabs. Again, we're going to be keeping this kind of more strictly in the realm of the full-length releases. I'm very much excited to get into the next couple records, but maybe we should share some of our recommendations.
Before that, should we, before we recommend it, should we talk about I Feel Nothing When You Cry?
Yeah, I mean, we should recommend for sure that there is like a new fucking Thou song out. I think we've been
blessed.
We have been blessed. Swindle has been shouting into the ether on many episodes for this to happen. There were kind of some murmurs of a new record we saw like on social media. We knew one was going to be in the works for a while. We finally got the first song, I Feel Nothing When You Cry, which will be out on Umbilical. The upcoming release, May 31st, Sacred Bones Records, which the band worked on previous releases with. This is their first full length of original music since Magus 2018. Not to mention, you know, obviously this band's been busy with the collabs we mentioned, Emma Ruth Rundle, Ms. Moore. It's energetic. It is like very in your face.
It's supposed to be, and again, you know, I mentioned it earlier, but it's supposed to be the band's take on what a Youth Crew track would sound like. So just hearing that, it's like, all right, what are you setting us up for?
I even heard, I think Andy shared a thing that he wrote it as an homage to a Smashing Pumpkins track.
That's even better.
Yeah. So I love it.
Who knows?
It's some great stuff. It got me excited. I don't know if this song in particular is going to be on the album in particular. They released, so the album itself, you pre-order it, you have the full length, but then they have like a little 7-inch thing that comes with it.
I think all three of us got that version.
So I'm a little confused there. So I don't know which it's gonna end up, but I love this first song.
On the listing of Umbilical on Bandcamp, I Feel Nothing When You Cry is track 11.
Okay.
There you go. So, and maybe that's, I don't know if on Bandcamp they just put all the songs together in one thing.
Yeah.
And maybe the 7-inch will be different. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but it's coming out May 31st, Sacred Bones Records. The band's also going on tour very soon. They had postponed this Australian tour, I think, before, but going to be going to Australia and New Zealand with Full of Hell, who are just going to be my recommendation for this episode as well. Coagulated Bliss, the title track from their upcoming record, Unclosed Casket Activities, is going to be dropping this Friday, April 26th. I hope that's when this episode's coming out. So, but we've already got some singles thus far. Doors to Mental Agony. We also got Gasping Dust, which features Ross Dolan of Immolation as well.
Fuck. 2
great songs, some great music videos as well. I'll definitely check those out. They're going to be on tour, not only with Thou and Australia and New Zealand, but they're on tour with Dying Fetus, 200 Stab Wounds, Cruelty, Psycho Frame. I'm going to try to catch them on the May 9th date at the Forge in Joliet. Going to be looking forward to that one. I've seen Full Hell a number of times. I've seen 200 Stab Wounds, I think once, but I've not seen Dying Fetus or Cruelty. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Other than that, I don't know if anybody was going to recommend this, so I'll just throw it out there. The latest single from Gatecreeper, Master of Chaos. The latest single from their upcoming release, Dark Superstition, May 17th of this year, Nuclear Blast Records. I think the first 2 tracks were definitely kind of a shift in a different direction. They added some new elements to those. This one definitely feels more in line what I've heard on previous Gatecreeper releases, I think.
This sounds a bit like Deserted and Cenarian Deprivation.
Yeah. Although I will say, I think I noticed at points where Chase was like noticeably better vocally on this song. There were some things that he was doing that I'm like, man, they really, really practiced the hell out of this stuff for sure.
I think this album's definitely going to have. This is definitely going to be the record that is going to be the most melodic thing they've ever done, for sure. Just based off the other 2 singles that have released, and being they worked with a member of Dismember on this. This is going to be kind of, I think, a tribute to a lot of those Swedish death metal bands. The Gatlinburg stuff, and I'm for it. Between this and the most recent Upon Stone record, like, God, come on.
My first rec is No Man's album Glitter and Spit. It's punk, it's fast. I think there is a Palestinian person that does vocals, so lots of the songs are about genocide, and I would check that out. My second rec is it's not featuring a member of Thou, it is a member of Thou. It's Andy's project Supplicate. He came out with an album called Skulk in March. It's kind of ambient, dark, synthy. I think it's a little gothic. So support, if you like Thou, support everyone in Thou. Listen to that.
So I've got 3. First one is the newest release from the death metal band Replicant. Their album is entitled Infinite Mortality, out on Transcending Obscurity Records. I got into this band with their prior release over the pandemic. This is an album that sounds like if Machine Head played death metal, like a lot of those kind of not artificial, but those natural harmonics are used, and the riffs are kind of dissonant, and there's kind of these almost 90s metal kind of stylistic riffs, and they're just a really cool, straight up death metal record. Also, the most recent released from Exist, called Hijacking the Zeitgeist through Prosthetic Records. This is a band I have appreciated from afar for much of their catalog. They had all the aspects of a band I would enjoy. Technically proficient, a little bit progressive, more so in the sense of like Cynic or something along those lines. But maybe the albums were a little too long, a little too much material. This is this is 36 minutes long. From beginning to end, I was interested. The playing on this is phenomenal, but also the textures on the songs are really great too. And finally, this is just, I saw Decibel Magazine post about this, I think this morning, and I went, I got to check this out. The most recent release from Scrotal Erosion. The album is called Smells Like Something That Died a While Ago. It's 8 songs. It's 8 minutes long. It is the most ludicrous shit I've ever heard. Actually, it's not that I've ever heard. I've heard some ludicrous shit, but this is just.
They don't talk enough about him.
It is stand up. It is the most just. This has to be considered gore grind, or something adjacent to it. It was too fun to not like put on here. Like, you can listen to it twice in a shower. Like, there you go.
I wouldn't want to listen to that in the shower.
Scrotal Erosion. Say it with me. Scrotal Erosion.
Damn. Well, those are our recs for the week. Thank you so much for joining us on our first part of our Thou Deep Dive. Very excited to get in this band. Obviously, we're big fans. Got a couple more records on the way. If you'd like to stay up to date with what we're doing, head on over to @RiffWorshipPod, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. You can also reach out to us via email, riffworshipPod@gmail.com. If you want to say, hey, maybe let us know if there's a record that you'd like us to cover. Let us know who you'd like us to interview on the show. We also have our playlists. Riffs on Repeat on Spotify, Dylan's playlist on Apple Music, Hits from the Crypt. Those are updated each week. So if you're ever looking for something new, you can typically find it there. But that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next Wednesday. For myself, Swindle, Dylan. See you next time. Bye.